Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome to Caravan to Midnight for the very first time, Mr. Ron Foster. He is a prolific writer. Over 60 different books, but kind of in the same groove. I'll explain. He describes himself as a Southern author. Cumberland and Hallelujah. He has shared his vast knowledge and a large library of books about survival and preparedness, about which most of us are woefully remiss. His books are both fiction and nonfiction. He's best known for his prepper fiction. Even his fiction books are loaded with survival and self-sufficiency techniques that one can learn. Ron Foster's knowledge in his field is extensive and has well prepared him for writing about survival in a post-apocalyptic world where society is broken down. Ron also holds a degree in homeland security. I didn't even know that was possible. I'll ask him about it in a minute. In today's conversation, we're going to discuss potential political and global hotspot issues as well as practical tools you can use to help your family navigate through uncertain times and even more uncertain circumstances. So without further ado, here he is, Ron Foster. Hey, Ron, thanks for coming on the program. Thanks for making the time.
Well, thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here. Been looking forward to this all week.
Well, let me ask you something. I didn't even know a person could obtain a degree in homeland security, but I guess it stands to reason you could. It's been a long time since I was in the realm of higher education, you know?
Oh, so yes. There's many colleges that offer that now.
Oh, gotcha.
You can go two ways. And I started out emergency management, which is basically command and control of a disaster. You're just coordinating the elements and keeping the fire department from arguing with police, et cetera. But if you go into homeland security specifically, basically what you're studying is terrorism and how it affects the world. I didn't like that as much because they spend too much time on the label. You study the philosophy of terrorism and why one man's terrorist is another man's hero, et cetera. And you decide whether or not you're going to use that in your political agenda, which anytime they put a label on something, there's a meaning behind it. And we can't really say it for what it is. The military officers complain greatly and deeply that they couldn't say, you're Islamist or you're ISIS or, how they change names constantly.
Yeah, I'll tell you, everything's got to have a label or it's hardly even recognized. I understand there are, I want to say either 22 or 27, 20-something actual terror training camps in the United States, but they don't have an official label, so FBI not really doing anything about it, mostly up in Minnesota and Tennessee, places like that. It's, what's the mentality? Can you shed just a little bit of light on the mentality of those who are charged with homeland security? I mean, the moment that George W. Bush said that, I went, oh, Lord, really? Homeland security? Okay, fine. How effective is it? It seems like it's more of a nuisance.
It is. Basically, they said, they used 911 to create homeland security. And they said it's because the lack of communication between departments, that there had to be somebody in the middle coordinating this. Now, I can understand that, like FEMA, et cetera, when we go in with the radios, a lot of people have, you hear the cops say a 10 whatever, and that means one thing to them, it means something else to the county over. So they have to be standardized on that. But what they've done is they've taken over such a vast array of services with oversight, and they say that they're going to ensure that they all talk together, et cetera. You get more bureaucracy. FEMA is talking about, we don't want to be under them. They have nothing to do with us. When they took over that, everything, went to hell in a handbasket on our responses because they're constantly, politicizing whatever thing that they want to do. Right now they're saying, for example, you see the news say, on the leftist media that DHS is only doing border security and that we've left off cybersecurity, or we're saying, he's not looking at this or that he's cleaning the house over there too, getting people out of the way. And they're just too far overreaching. They have too many tasks to do, and the people that really do it, have to put up with people telling them how to do their job, per se.
You know, Ron, you provided several notes of things that we can talk about, and of course we'll get to all of that. But I'm going to order off the menu here for just a second. These FEMA camps, I presume, actually exist, and if they do, why are they not being used to house these zillions of illegal aliens?
Well, you'd have to spring them on people for actually that's what they were for to begin with. We expected a surge to come over the border of illegal aliens, that if they came over, we'd have to do something with them if they had a disaster south of us or whatever. And that's what they were originally made for, and they still are made for that. People go a little crazy with the conspiracy theories on what they are, et cetera, and there's a lot of closed down bases or camps, et cetera. We had internment camps for Japanese, I know, and people go, oh, look, that's a FEMA camp. No, that was an old Japanese internment camp, which is just bad. But you have to do something with the populace. So we have to assemble them somewhere. So it's not the guard towers and everything else that you're thinking of. It does have those things, but think about it this way. If we're short on food and you got the inmates go crazy, you have to have some way to control them or have access to people in there. I've been around a lot of the ones we have for hurricane people, just basically a big trailer park just pops up out of nowhere. Now, those things are interesting to watch because they have their own rules. No outsiders allowed, which the media, like yourself, you're not allowed to come in and interview. Very messed up. Never did like that. You have to have it their way. You can't be planting tomatoes out in front of your trailer. You can't have flags out there. It's their own environment, but it's their way of the highway. That's what they say. They're controlling a populace that needs to be controlled in a certain way. People nowadays don't act like the generation before us, the greatest generation, World War II, et cetera. We tend to be more opinionated, and then, there's a certain class of people that entitlement crowd that will go crazy if they don't think they're getting their share of things. I experienced that when I went to Hurricane Frederick in the National Guard. We had went down there. Our crazy governor at that time, we had so much looting going on, said, fire one warning shot, shoot to kill. Of course, the National Guard commander said, if you do that, I'll put you a level with myself. And it didn't happen. But there's a little town outside that was basically a historically black community, said they weren't getting their share of everything. Their chief of police and everybody quit, mayor quit. And so we come rolling in there at 2 a.m. in the morning. They shot our tires out. That's craziness. So you got to take that into account when you're doing certain responses, and you can't have it like this little Eden FEMA camp thing where everybody's going to get along, because they don't get along. You put a lot of different people, many different classes of society all together at once, and then force them to basically comply.
Well, I suppose that's very principle. The principle you're describing, I think, could probably be extrapolated to include this entire country. They've got all these people coming in here that are not going to assimilate into the American traditions, different religions, some of them quite fanatical. And, I'm thinking that, maybe the left is trying to turn the United States into one big FEMA camp where everything has to be controlled because nobody's going to get along naturally.
Well, that's true. Well, that's when you can come in with the labels, do what you want. That's one reason I was trying to get my higher degrees in order to change policy. I believe in the more holistic approach, like South Dakota and North Dakota colleges. They teach the holistic approach to disaster, mostly because they have a huge Native American population around there. And you have to deal with them differently. You have to deal with all different cultures differently to get what you want. That's the holistic approach. The military approach is the command and control approach that is prevalent now with the Homeland Security. For example, in California, if you have a big earthquake out there, if I was in charge, I was the emergency manager, I would know there's a lot of South Americans there that are used to earthquakes. They have already responded to them their times, and what they like to do is they like to get out in their front yard, put up a tent or out of sheets, whatever they got, have cookouts, help each other do what they want. The command and control module, if you get the chief of police involved in there, he'd want to herd them all into a baseball arena or something like that, you know. And watch me, you're going to have a riot on your hands. So if you don't change policies or understand cultures, you're going to have problems. And then the only way you can do that is change policy. And when I was trying to do it, you have to have a higher degree, but it's all politicized to get those appointments anyway. So I want to about put my message out my way. My emergency message go in my books, and I teach people that way.
When you write these books, you know, you've said that it's easier to teach people, really, if you put the teaching into the form of a story, even a fictional story, because, of course, you know, anybody who writes fiction, it's going to be nonfiction at some point in the future. I mean, even the stuff that the science fiction writers were thinking was way, way out there. And well, they might not have been, but the readers were thinking, wow, this is really far out there. Well, much of it has come to pass. So, I mean, is that just the way the human being works? If it's a game, it'll be a lot more fun and they're more inclined to learn it than if it's a lesson and they're forced to study.
Yeah, if you read a dry survival book, you don't remember it like, oh, this character, David, did this or that in this situation. I remember this story, or I put some humor in it. They can remember it better, and they learn more. So my first book I did, Prepper's Road March, I pretended I was going up for a FEMA interview in Atlanta. And during that time, everybody loves their bug out bags and whatnot. So I made sure my bug out bag was 25 miles away. I couldn't get to it, and basically told somebody how to get home with nothing. And my saying is prepare to lose everything but your mind, and then how to not freak out when it happens, you know?
Just a couple of guys sitting around talking, Ron. They got Mexican soldiers pulling guns on U.S. soldiers on our turf, on our side of the border. You got some people that went down there and decided to round up a bunch of them because they're at the border. There's a lot of crime, a lot of rape trees, a lot of murder, a lot of rape, a lot of just general crime.
Right.
And this New Mexican governor, who I suspect is of Mexican descent herself, her last name would suggest so. Oh, got to call the FBI and arrest the leader of this. I'm really wondering how long the slide into the abyss really is, because it looks to me at this point that it's only going to take one or two significant, not even big incidents, but significant ones, and we're going to wind up with militia power along the borders of the country. I mean, do you see this happening? Do you see the feds actually doing anything about this? Keep hearing about this comprehensive immigration reform. Well, how about this? Enter legally or don't enter. That seems pretty comprehensive to me. Other people have come up from Mexico and Central America and other places. They went through the process. They're citizens. Now, they're citizens. It took a while, but okay, well, that's just how it is. But they're happy about it. They're proud of it. It means something to them, rather than these ones that just come over here and they get subsidies and all this, then go to the sanctuary cities and just kind of hang out. They'll get subsidies and whatever they need. So I'm just wondering, based on your experience in the profession of Homeland Security and combined with your imagination, do you see an ugly scenario about to unfold? I mean, we know everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but where do you see this country going in the next 5 years? Yeah,
it's all part of the bigger picture. Soros, we know, is paying. These people come up. The countries are getting money. We removed what we were paying. They're getting paid to send these people. They're paying these people to come up here. They paint the picture of the great America. It's a political move to have that many people coming in. They're using the laws against us to do this. And then, people are getting sick of it, but we got the socialist, politically correct. Gotta do it this and that way. And they don't, tell you actually what's going on or the numbers of MS-13 that's coming up with them, the number of the Middle Easterners that are mixing in there, the human traffickers, et cetera. So if with all that's going on, they're just moving more in here because when the wall goes up, they're not going to be able to get so much in. So they might as well do it all now. But I think it's all the, if you want to go the deep state way, it's their way of making a lot of noise and distracting and overwhelming the system, drawing attention off of whatever else is going on.
And other than keeping the Democrats in power, what do you think the actual objective may be in flooding the country with all these people?
Banking. When you go banking-wise, one is a draw on the country. That's a form of terrorism itself. It's like all the unexplained fires we had in California, and we know the Islamists taught that was a terrorist thing that was good for war, et cetera, because you can economically hurt a country to desperation. It removes resources from actually enforcing the laws or your border patrol or whatever. If they can tie us up, and then if you get your people to argue with your government, not trust your government, not support your government, et cetera, that's all power to the master plan of things to break the system down and get what you want done in other directions. So as long as they keep that going on, we can't focus on the bigger picture of taking care of this worldwide, which I think it is happening. You see the yellow vest movements. You see various things that we never thought would happen before, North Korea, et cetera. Everything is changing now. We're getting out of the war over in the Middle East. We're not threatening, even though Iran's going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, they say at the moment. But I think Trump saw that coming. That's why we're increasing our oil production here. We're trying to offset an economic collapse that they have a plan, but it's not going to happen while he's in office, I don't believe. But it wouldn't take much to tip us either way.
Yeah, it's either between an economic collapse or an earthquake or something crazy happening politically that sets off some social unrest. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities out there. And I suppose...
Yeah, but you got a chance of making a false flag so easy with that amount of immigrants, or have one of them. You can play two sides off the middle, because you got the ones that say, oh, we'll welcome them. Oh, no, they're terrible, I think it was wonderful. Trump said, hey, I'll send you a whole bunch of them, as many as you want, and they don't want that, right? So he's playing his chess game well here, I think.
Let's talk about drugs for a minute. You mentioned the Straits of Hormuz. I never even heard of fentanyl. Some people call it fentanyl. Maybe it's two different things. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. But I never heard of that. I don't know, 2 years ago. And now everybody seems to know the name. I didn't even know it existed. Where's this stuff coming from? And what's this about it being classified as a weapon of mass destruction?
That's a very interesting thing. Homeland Security wants to declare it a weapon of mass destruction because basically back in 2002, Russia used it in a movie theater against Chechnyan terrorists. That killed a bunch of the terrorists. It killed a bunch of the hostages, etc. So that told us that we'd see other countries weaponize this particular drug. It didn't fall under the mustard gas and all this and that, but this is some terribly nasty, super powerful stuff. Now, the Mexican cartels sell it on the dark web. China was making it. Trump just got China, which is a great thing, but you didn't see it in the news, to declare that as a illegal drug to export or control. That still allowed them to do it, but not like it was. So we reduced that. But see, if Homeland Security gets to call that a weapon of mass destruction, you change the whole game now, because they can come after you under the terrorism acts, the sedition acts, anything that they want. It's a new label. They can also switch technology over there for like sniffers for it. Enhanced sentences. You can say, look, we can charge you under having a weapon of mass destruction, the same as a nuclear bomb. We're going to, execute you, kill you, do whatever military tribunal. You don't even have to have a court if it's against the United States. Or you can say, oh, well, I'll let you go to regular court and only get 10 years. So they can really play with this one in big ways.
Wow. Hey,
and opioid.
No, keep going. You weren't finished. Sorry. The opioid what?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that the opioid crisis is a huge thing, but see, that's an opioid type drug itself. And what they're going to do with this, they can combine the two together when they're talking their politics. But I was reading this morning, they're saying, oh, this could be a threat to air and water. Now, you can spend $6,000 on one class, one semester, that degree I was talking about. And they're talking about, oh, write me a scenario where somebody puts something in the water and, to attack the United States. And so you get all worried about it. You're trying to write something. And then at the end of the course, they tell you that's not possible. A big reservoir takes so much unless it was a whole bunch of nuclear or whatever. There's no way to poison the water. So you just spend $6,000 for nothing. I learned that one, but they're going to use the same threat to get the dams, increased security. People are going to be worried about their water. They're going to buy water filters. They're going to do all this and that. When actually that's not a feasible way to carry out a terrorist act at all. You can't do that. They could take truckloads of stuff and pour it in there all day long and it wouldn't get to you.
How many books have you written altogether? Is it really over 60?
Yeah, I got 64. Yeah. Now I lose track of them because every once in a while I'll take 3 books, combine them into one to get out of the Amazon monopoly over there, sell off, and then people get a cheaper book, that's bigger volume. So not all of that. I did a few before they came out with the independent publishing. I did one on gemology, consumer gemology, a long time ago, but that was a traditional press, and that's not even for sale anymore. I'll tell you how to use a pair of sunglasses, something like that. Tell if something was an emerald or a green light, because I had all these tourists going down to Colombia and they're buying emeralds, but they're actually all the green lights at the intersections were missing because they were selling the tourists for emeralds, that and 7-Up bottles.
That's interesting. It really is 64. And when did you start writing, actually?
1982, I wrote a book called The Rural Ranger. That's before I even went to college. I went to college late in life, got my bachelor's at 50. But I wrote down all my country boy stuff that I grew up with that a lot of people were forgetting. And I wrote down before I started forgetting a lot of it. And kind of took off with that. And then I wrote a fiction book. I put out about 4 or 5 a year, I guess. Just keep up with the pace. When I first did it, there's only, like 3 of us doing it. Now there's thousands. And it's fun to see people's take on things. I'm still the only one. I don't do shoot 'em ups. A lot of people in my genre love to do the shoot 'em ups. And to me, it's like we grew up watching the old westerns where the sheriff gets shot every other week or something like that. That's not realistic to me. So I just write realistic things.
Gotcha.
And then all those books, I've yet to shoot anything. So it's people like that. They get tired of the blood and gore, and they read mine. They read mine because they learn something in every book, and I've not repeated a trick in a book yet. I'm running out of them, but I've not repeated a survival trick yet.
Gotcha. Well, now, people have been talking about, we talk with Dr. Peter Vincent Pry quite a bit about the destruction of the grid from either an EMP, but primarily he's like the EMP. He's the go-to man for EMP. But there's also this coronal mass ejection problem. And, the sun is in its solar minimum right now, which means at some point, they have historical data, but the sun does what it wants. And we don't really have any control over what it does. That's what the global warming people don't seem to understand. Maybe we could tax the sun, and that would make it stop warming the earth. I'm trying to be funny here with this because it's absolutely ludicrous. However, there was this Carrington event back in the 1800s that set a bunch of stuff on fire and really messed things up. But you're not really as worried about that as you are about a cyber attack that would bring the grid down, which I suppose would have the same effect, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes. It's so easy to do, and they've tried different things. Well, DHS actually took giant, expensive generators that were on a dam and see if they could make them spin out. And we did the same thing to the Iranians with those centrifuges over there to where they self-destruct. And then they added what they wanted to it to say, no, we can't do that. But it's so easy. All you have to do is take down 9 stations in the United States, and we're totally down for 6 months to a year. Now they can do that like out in California. They didn't really talk about, the guy right out those oil field transformers. They just shot holes in them. Now, to me, that's a special forces attack. Now, I've got experience with the Army on that. Which ones you know exactly what to shoot to cause the most damage type thing. So a physical attack and a cyber attack can go on. I wrote a book called Smoking Skillet. And I put the Koreans in there at that time because they were shooting their missiles off. And they got all the new handy-dandy software, malware, whatever you want to call it, that the CIA was using. And they were collecting money worldwide. And I was showing how they could take the United States down without even firing a shot or even taking credit for it, blaming it on the Iranians and whatnot. Now, Iran is very good at cyber warfare. Now, they're going to be attacking our banking system. You do that at the same time they close down the Strait of Hormuz, you lose the economy, focus on the economy. Everybody's yelling at the president. That's the only way they can get to him, per se. So just even their saber rattling affects the other countries around them.
That's interesting. What part of the country are you in, just generally?
Alabama.
Alabama.
Deep South. Alabama. Yeah, that's where the accent comes from.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any deeper than Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
And
we just got done, had a bunch of apocalyptic writers, had 9 apocalyptic writers come down. So I don't know if you've seen the movie Big Fish or not. Big Fish, the movie. Anyway, there's an island outside of Montgomery. It's a very good movie. And they left a movie set out there. So I said, for anybody that writes apocalypse type stuff, come down here because we got all these empty houses to write about. The causeway goes underwater. If they let the dam out, you can get stuck on this island if the water rises too. So we just got done with that. That was very good. Now, Johnny Jackson, ex-Special Forces, Alabama, he wrote a book called Islam Rising, put all his history down there, 40 years, and showing what their plan is, which a lot of people don't realize. They just go, that's Iran. But when we're dealing with people like in Iran, they believe in the Mahdi, that whatever they do, they'll start a nuclear war because they think it's going to bring their profit back versus like the Japanese worship the emperor. You can't deal with certain mentalities in a normal diplomatic way. They do what they want to. So in fiction authors, people like Johnny Jacks, that take what they know, put it in fiction, say, what if, we used to call that red team in the military, where you would imagine how you would take over or rob something if you were a robber or a terrorist or whatever, and you put that down. That's the only way you learn where the loopholes are at, I did Long Beach in California. What would happen there if they just put a dirty bomb out? If you shut down all that commerce that comes in and out of that port for a number of years, you immediately implode the economy. And it wouldn't take much. You can just get a whole bunch of old x-ray machines and make it register on the Geiger counters. And Clinton was going to sell it to China anyway, so it's huge problems. And a lot of people don't realize how much stuff we actually get from California. Milk, like 80% of our milk comes out of there, all the different foods. And then I saw on our list of questions when we get to eventually, when you want to, Arc Storm, which is quite an interesting event out there. It's their bigger threat, or the big one.
Why don't we talk about that? I saw that on your notes, and I got to tell you, I'm not familiar with the term at all.
Yeah, Geologic Survey come out with it, spelled capital A, capital R, small k, then storm, the way you write it. So it's not a misspelling. It's atmospheric river. The K stands for 1,000 times 1,000 storm. And atmospheric rivers are the Pineapple Express, as some people would refer to some of that air coming in. It actually sank the valley in California. It rained for 43 days. They got 10 foot of water and rain in some areas. All that goes underwater. The governor of the state actually had to go get inaugurated in a rowboat. Now, if you imagine the way it's built up now, if that happened, nobody can escape. They figured out, their studies, that how many billions of dollars, I think it was 190 billion or something like that, how much it would cost to have that kind of disaster happen. But they have not said what they're going to do with all the people. And then so I wrote a book on that called Arkstorm one time. And I said, well, what happens when you got the Crips and the Bloods and the Hells Angels all going down the same road with everybody else trying to evacuate? And then they get all going to end up in a shelter over in Arizona or something if they make it that far. And I put the only survival tricks I could think of. I used what I knew from Louisiana floods. I made a Katrina lifeboat for everybody. You know, your box springs on your bed.
Yeah.
If you take cooking oil, paint, anything like that, anything that you can seal that bed with, you got your raft and you can float. So basically I told everybody how to make lifeboats out of their beds.
Wow.
That's the only thing I can think of to do.
That's pretty strong, man. It really is. Just jumping back to this Carrington event thing, you said there's a 12% chance each year. Does that mean
yes, that's according to NASA.
So that doesn't mean an additional 12% each year. It just means 12% flat. Yeah.
Yeah, just 12% flat with the current things on. But you can imagine how much your insurance would cost if there's 12% chance when you go out the door to get in a wreck, it would go up.
Right.
So the prepper I am, if there's a 12% chance of something happening with it, somebody take 12% of income and prep a little bit for it, and then you'll be fine. You can get the 20-year stuff and you're good to go for life. You at least have something, you know. It's not the way the left media goes, oh, it's never going to happen, all this and that. It's already happened. We're overdue for it. And I think currently right now, since you're in solar minimum, a lot of people go, well, the threat's down. No, our shields are reduced during that. So any kind of event during a solar minimum take less strength to knock us out. Plus, we're heading towards what they might call the Mulder minimum, historically speaking, which will put us in a mini ice age.
Wow. Well, you know, I've been hearing about that since the early 70s when I was a kid, that the mini ice age is coming. Look, it seems to me that there's a good possibility that this solar minimum is what has caused these record low temperatures this past winter. Notice how remiss the media was in doing much reporting about this. I mean, snow at weird times of the year, more snow than ever before in certain areas, like unbelievably cold
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How about that?
It's global warming. It snowed in Saudi Arabia. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like one channel that I watch a lot, Ice Age Farmer, and he gives you the prices and the prices that are going up, and the number of crop losses throughout the world that we're going into right now, showing that, in his opinion, that a mini ice age is actually inching its way in here now. So one thing I always tell everybody when, you know, they always talk about bugging out or whatever, I say, get your winter clothes because you're not going to be able to find, like I'm right down here from Florida. I want to go be a beach bum if the apocalypse hits because I like crab and oysters better than I like squirrels and possums. So I want to head that way.
Yeah.
But I'm going to carry my coats with me, all my winter gear.
Yeah, those possums. Those possums a little bit greasy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, even if you barbecue them good, they're an odd critter. But I'll tell you what, they're great because they don't get rabies. They eat ticks. They eat thousands of ticks. They're darn near immune to snake bite. They're quite interesting. I wrote a book called Possum Prepping, by the way. And what the theory behind that is, a possum has everything it needs to live in the country or the city. And if you just act like a possum, you can get by. And I tell people I did the same thing. I lived the lifestyle. Go get you a piece of land, small piece of land, owner finance, and just start. And then do your gardens and do this and that. And it's not hard to attain, especially down here in the South.
Are you thinking we're going to have this? We're going to have this collapse. It may not be a total collapse, but we're going to have to. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as woo-woo as this may sound, there is this thing called the odds. The concept of probability, and on a long enough timeline. I mean, everything happens eventually that can happen. It's that Murphy's Law thing in a way. People think it's a joke. It really isn't. Whatever can go wrong eventually will go wrong. Are you thinking that we may experience an apocalypse-esque event here over the next, 5 years, 10 years, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I believe it has to. Too much is going on. Technology is changing too much. The rogue states will be rogue no matter what.
Yep.
And we're so technology oriented, and who predicted the Depression, Great Depression? We said, okay, a lot of people did, but it happened. And we got on the census millions of people that just disappeared. And back then they knew what they were doing about living or whatever. I mean, I live in the country, but half everybody around here doesn't have any gardens or anything else. So they don't even know, except for grandma taught them, or they complain about shelling beans if they had to, but they can't even get by in the country. In the cities, I call the great equalizer when the municipal water shuts off. Now, how long does that take? That's when I start my clock counting down. They're going to move to the nearest water that's there, the migration. My idea is not be caught at the water hole with the rest of the animals. I'm going to stay my little butt at home. And so the cities will empty at that point. That's when the craziness really begins. And they go to the country thinking there's food out there. Well, there's no food out there, and people don't even know what I learned growing up. So it's going to be a huge mess.
Well, that's what I've been thinking too. If it really hits the fan and people start leaving the cities, some people really have the mistaken idea they're going to grab their deer rifle and a couple of boxes of MREs and sleeping bag in a tent maybe and get out there in the sticks. There's no sticks that's going to accommodate you. And then after that, what if you get sick? What if you catch the flu? What if you get a head cold? What if you get a sinus infection? What are you going to do? Walk back into town? Yeah. It's just not going to work,
That's what I said. You don't need a bug out bag. You're going to find them all up and down the road somewhere, because people, that's the suicide mission. And populations of game are down. They don't really understand what goes on. For example, Alabama, we got everything under the sun down here to eat, but there's only like 2 squirrels per acre at the most, It's not like the parks. And a lot of people don't realize that the suburbs, you actually got more animals living in the suburbs to eat than you do out in the woods. And so you're better off staying if you can stay. Now, I tell people, I wrote a book on backyard preparedness. The best survivor I know is that 13-year-old boy with that BB gun walking around that cow pasture with his buddies every day, and they know where everything's at, and they do a little hunting and do this and that. They can feed themselves. Now, if you're in the city, I say, all right, get you a bird feeder and a BB gun. Bucket of rice. We're going to eat Chinese, but you're going to eat. You're much better off than thinking you're going to walk through the woods and you don't know and looking for a deer. If you get one deer, you don't even know how to, preserve it for any length of time. Then everybody is going to be shooting back at you doing the same thing. So stay out the woods.
Now, did you work with Department of Homeland Security or did you just get the degree and make it a study? Were you active with that outfit?
I've done both. I was in the disaster reserve. Now, this is an interesting thing. All my background, military, combat arms, this, that, the other. They put me in small business loans.
Small business loans.
So I give you loans, which comes under the Department of Homeland Security now. See how crazy they're far reaching there?
Yeah. All the way to stupid.
So
Yes.
I wrote oh yeah, no, I wrote kind of a fun book about that. I did a driving towards disaster book, and I pretended that there was a pandemic going on during a mega hurricane, and they forced everybody, into a quarantine type situation. But I had fun with it because I dealt with the Greeks in Panama City, Florida. They own the nice restaurants and most of the boats and all that, and they have certain burial customs. So I used my money that I had access to from small business to make it easier on the population, get the ice machines going and all that sort of thing. Now I know you prepped, sir. Have you thought about having you a portable ice machine that can run off your car battery?
Not even
I
once.
love my ice.
Not even
Yeah,
once.
I mean that's
Never thought of it.
a cheap prep, right? So you got ice, you got a solar panel, a 12-volt battery, and a portable ice machine. You're good to go. But nobody teaches or talks about this. They want to talk about, what's the latest greatest gun or something like that out here in my community. So I do my prepping a little bit different than a lot of people.
I'm thinking that in a real emergency, I mean, look, for whatever reason, the federal government cannot even keep this invasion from the South from happening. If they put the military down the border, this illegal immigration thing would stop in about 10 minutes, but they won't do it. It's not the people on the ground that are the problem, much like all these other departments, CIA, FBI, DHS, whatever. It's the leadership, and it's the structure. The structure, it seems to me, is so complicated that it just has incompetence and the slow reaction component built into it. So if I were to ask you, can the government actually help anyone in times of a big time emergency? Or is there controlling the situation limited to just keeping the population still?
Yeah, you have a continuity of government, which is the one that worries me, where they have their bunkers and they're stocked and they have their plan. Government will always stay running, per se. On a huge nationwide disaster, we're going with the military plan. Now, you got to remember that we've zapped Iraq and other countries. We're good at country rebuilding. So they're going to try to do it the same way over here a little bit. But people are under the misapprehension. I know I raised holy hell when I was in college with the professors when they were Posse Comitatus does no longer exist, but we're still acting like it does. So our military can actually do law enforcement now, and nobody's really talking about it. They're quoting old stuff and Posse Comitatus. Oh, they're not allowed. They're totally allowed. They changed the laws way back there in the Bush administration and got even more executive orders done that they can take over anything they want. And Obama had with the internet, they got the switch. They can turn stuff on and off at will now. So you cut the communication. That's why the president did it on the texts. Because if whoever has access to that switch, they could shut down our communication, and you can do psyops with whoever's not connected in communications that way. And keep the kettle boiling, per se.
That's interesting. So I heard about this. I heard that Obama wanted a kill switch, or, Obama wanted a kill switch. Somebody up there in government wanted an internet kill switch. Just stands to reason that they have one. So it should come as no surprise to people to learn that it exists. For a fact it exists? Pretty sure it does.
Yes, it does. It definitely exists.
I mean,
and then your emergency broadcast system, talking about EMP, it's fun. The emergency broadcast system, they spent $100 million on one of their main antennas. Guess what? They didn't fix the holes where the wires go in. It wasn't EMP proof. I mean, it got zapped on, the Army went over there, hit the button on their tester and at one of the lowest levels. So that was your normal broadcast system. That doesn't work. They have so much pork attached to everything that they do. They can't get anything done per se. It's not common sense, but they can't take care of anybody. You have to understand that all the dependents on a military base, they have to be taken care of, that are, wives and husbands or whatever, kids. You have the base itself, which, like Air Force bases, I grew up on them things. You can just climb over the fence if you want to, unless the MP happened to be riding by, and it wouldn't matter. Those are going to get overrun. They don't have a plan for that. I went and talked to Maxwell out here where the Air War College is when I was doing a treatise. And I said, what are you going to do? For example, you're busting the kids off base, and like the Chechens, they've taken over schools, and that was during the time when all the Muslim were signed up to be bus drivers and nobody said nothing. That was an interesting one. We know that's going to happen one day. I said, what are you going to do? He said, no, we're staying on the base. I said, who's taking care of them? People off base. So all I got to do is get all the kids on the military base hostage and do what they want. Don't you have a plan? Nah. And then I started getting the rigmarole, how they charge in, barracks, or, they shoot them up stuff, but not any planning, not any common sense. How would I go about doing this? All I got to do is I get all the generals, kids, and everybody else, and I got them. Now I can negotiate. It's crazy that what they don't plan for that is right out there in front of them, even though it's supposed to be a higher level education.
You bet. That is funny. Well, now, you got a note here, so I'm going to ask you about it. Why did you include the turnover of personnel in the White House on your notes? There has been a high level of turnover at the White House and throughout the administration. What's got your attention about this?
Well, one thing is they put second in charge of DHS, our airport security guy. And I think if you're already taking everybody's rights away and this and that, you don't put them in charge of the biggest thing that's happening out here, take away rights. Because that's that command and control model. That force compliance, propagandize, take shoes off, do whatever. Everything that we acquiesce to, that's who they got in there. So I'm like, why is he there? Well, TSA of all people, it's a joke,
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so we could have had anybody better in there. And then a lot of it is what their position is at DHS. They say they get in the middle of all these different groups and they get funding and they do this, that, the other thing. Why did they have any power at all? They don't know a first thing about emergency management. So why negotiate for FEMA or say, well, what's FEMA going to do with terrorists? We need to spend money on this, and they'll take it out of everybody's thing. But nobody that's in charge can move without getting their approval. And everybody's, they're not in the job. What's the TSA guy know about border security per se when he's used to everybody lining up and complying versus people climbing over walls?
And so the head of the TSA has taken over the number 2 position at DHS. And this is important to people. Why?
Well, the way Trump's handling it, he's only supposed to be in there for 210 days. That way you got plausible deniability, get fired, etc. You don't have the tenure. But the way he's going to approach things is going to force, it's just using force instead of understanding a culture or a situation. It's kind of like what I was referring to about the South Americans in California during an earthquake. They'd rather shove them in, a stadium and shades of Katrina coming to mind, or instead of letting them just stay on their own, be free and get by, and they'd be a lot better off, and then just come down there and do various drop-off stations at shopping centers for ice and food and whatnot, like I'm used to when I respond to hurricanes when I was in the Guard.
Interesting. And the creation of Department of When was the Department of Homeland Security actually created? Some have said that it was actually put together, and I think you're one of them, who said that this thing was put together before 9/11, and yet George W. Bush presented it as though, as a result of this terrible attack in New York City, we're going to put together the Department of Homeland Security. But it was actually on the books before then. Is that your understanding?
Oh, yeah. It was. There's always been something like that in one form or another, but that was the current form was about 8 years before 9/11 even happened. You know,
what does that tell you?
It says all in North was right. Remember, his testified agenda, this number, that number. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we've always had a plan in place, and that's what I think currently Trump's trying to do is get some of the deep-seated people with the plans out of the way so they can't be implemented, and don't allow new, like the Patriot Act, new rules to take away rights. I like what he did. So for, like Department of Natural Resources, for every one regulation you want, you got to take away 3, and mostly it's been all taken care of, like 30-1 now.
Wow. Oh boy. Now, let me just ask you about something else. I'm going to order off the menu. It's more fun anyway. A lot of times. I've been talking about the resurgence of communism all over the world, but especially in this country. What are you observing politically that you believe could make for a really good story that you could write, but where the reality is concerned? How dangerous do you think this leftist movement is in this country presently?
It's extremely dangerous because, as we know, history repeats itself. And I see amazing statistics come out like 50% of the millennials don't believe the Holocaust happened or something crazy like that, And then I like my latest one. I heard that, like Ocasio, the reason they stuck her in there, of course, they were just looking for an actress to do this, is so Bernie Sanders don't look so crazy. So he looks more moderate with his views. So they have all this going on so they can elect him president. And I said, I never thought about that, but that kind of makes sense. You put all the crazies up there, and then he comes in, he's not as crazy as them, and to gravitate that voting crowd towards him.
Yeah, well, I think she's an idiot. And I think personally, of course, I've been studying this for a while, but she doesn't have anything to bring to the party. I don't even know what this person's even doing there. And they got
abuse of funds. They got charges on her. I'm waiting for somebody to get charged. I mean, you keep hearing about it, but nobody does. I know it's just a waiting game. You have to get the judges correct first, get the proper way of doing it. And I like Trump building up Gitmo down there. But everybody's waiting when it happens, right?
Well, there's supposed to be a bunch of indictments out there that are being, thousands of them that are being unsealed slowly. So
83,000, last count I had, yeah. 83,000.
Yeah, they don't want to spook the public with that by doing it all at once, but there are people being served probably as we speak. Maybe even arrested.
Oh, yeah, well, watch the riots then, because we're getting ready. That's part of DHS and the military getting ready for the riots that occur. I mean, it's just like the white cop shoots black kid, and they have some craziness and then bust in some people. When you actually have something going on, they're getting ready to prepare to squash this, so you got to do it all at once. Otherwise, the city's going to burn. And whether or not they're going to declare martial law, I doubt it, but they will have the equivalent of it, and it'll be done at the state level instead of the federal level. States will declare their own National Guard out, or a city's curfew or something like that, so the Fed doesn't have to declare total martial law, and they can deal with it as they may. It's getting a very gray area when you get into that. But the states will request federal troops, and then it'll change over. That will take some time to get people to digest to having armed soldiers in the streets, et cetera.
What do you mean by a holistic response to emergencies versus the military approach that's been taken in South America? What is the holistic?
We were talking about it's more understand the culture, etc. I was involved in a negotiation with a tribe in the Midwest that they believe they prepare for a disaster. According to their religion, the disaster will happen. And therefore, they're the most flood-prone area that ever happened. They get flooded every year, but they would refuse to try to mitigate damages or do anything to prevent extensive flooding because they believed if they did it, it would happen. So we sat around, we talked to them for a while, and then come up with the Country Boy solution on it and said, hey, you prepared your garden every year. You know the bugs are going to come in here. You know there's drought, this and that. Just because you prepare for it didn't mean you lost your crop, did it? Said, no. So the chiefs got together, and they finally allowed people to come in there and build some culverts and do some things to prevent the disaster. So that's a holistic approach. Where FEMA previously, their policy was they threatened to remove funds with them. They threatened to jail people. They just gave them fits. And then the more they pushed hard against them, the more the people revolted. So that's the military approach versus the holistic approach.
I got you. There's not a lot of news coming out of Venezuela, but the Argentinians aren't doing much better. They really aren't. In fact, I saw a story over the weekend that indicated it got a lot of people coming up from Argentina. So Central America is not doing well. Is there anything that you're seeing that suggests, I mean, I know you don't know, but when you look at the whole situation map, what are you thinking? You thinking of financial collapse? What really, or we've got to get rid of this president, as that woolly mammoth Kamala Harris says. We've got to get rid of this president. I mean, what kind of an idiot would even say something like that? But anyway, I digress. The whole thing is, why has the whole place been thrown into chaos? I mean, are you privy to any information to suggest an answer to that question? I mean, okay, Maduro was defeated supposedly in the election. Now you got a bunch of people saying that, and many of them in a position of knowledge and authority on matters like this, because they're old enough to have witnessed it over and over again. But Maduro doesn't want to leave. The people want the new guy to come in. The United States wants the new guy to come in. The Chinese and the Russians are hovering around, and the Venezuelans are all suffering out there. They got nothing to eat, and they got no place to go. They got nothing to do. So, you know, that scenario. And yet you have other people who are saying, no, look at this video here. This guy went down there. There's food for everybody. Everything's fine. There's no crisis down there. I mean, Ron, you can't even get a straight answer out of anybody. You really can't. I mean, how is it even possible to know what's going on? Oh, but if the reports are correct,
I got friends down there.
What's that?
I got friends down here. I have friends that are down there, and they, like most Venezuelans that come in and out of the country, they have their money in USD. They didn't get hit with the believer going to hell, etc. Now, another thing you got to think of, too, who owns all the Citgo gas stations in the United States? That's Venezuela. So there's some politics going on, who gets money for what and what they want and their flow of gas. Then we're back to the Straits of Hormuz, et cetera. If we increased our oil production here, getting ready for what we knew what move Iran was going to do, and these Gulf states, and we're been steadily decreasing the amount of oil we take in from OPEC, et cetera. I'm thinking that's kind of a linchpin down there of if you can get, like, I mean, we're always sticking our nose in Guatemala. You can take Guatemala's army and run it over there to Venezuela or Argentina, wherever you want. And what's his name? Furfall lived the Argentina economic crisis, and a great person to listen to how he survived the economic collapse there and what's important and what's not in the prepper community. I think it's all tied to the central banks that are losing power. That area is pretty unique. They have a Japanese community in Peru down there. I don't know if you knew this or not, that everybody that came in, the Yamashita Gold and all that sort of thing, they have whole groups of just nothing but bankers. And the Chinese have bankers all over the place, picking up the gold. You have Indians. Everybody kind of gleans off all this. And if they can, some way take control of a new system of money. I mean, if the peso, the bolivar, the USD, we're switching from petrodollars, Iran saying we're backing them with gold. There's a whole big shift, and then we're after the Fed at the moment also. So if you got to tie something into that, I don't know where it's going to go. I'm glad that we're not saber rattling too bad. We got some people that are, but I don't think the U.S. will get involved in Venezuela.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope not. That could be a real flashpoint. It's usually something, big trouble usually comes from where you least expect it, and generally from some comparatively less significant part of the world. But it's interesting what you said about Citgo, because 7-Eleven's gas, that's all Venezuelan gas also, gasoline.
Yeah, so it hurts our economy. Look at the fires. I mean, the millions and millions. You can take a country down economically, all kind of ways, or create discord where you don't trust the government. Oh, Trump's racist. It's that. They get this going to where nobody follows in one direction. They keep us divided.
Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, what should we? Look, here's the thing. You see something pop up on the horizon. You go, okay, I see a dark sail over there on the horizon. It's coming this way. Okay, well, by the time you see that dark sail on the warship that's headed your way, you're late. So, I mean, without just making it your life's mission, even though maybe you should, maybe you'll be thinking you should have made it your life's mission after the fan blades are bent up so bad from all the stuff hitting that fan. But that aside, there's so much to prepare for, Ron. What do you start with? I mean, just food, water, and shelter. Okay, that's fine. Now you can't go anywhere because every time we have a big storm threat, oh man, there's lines at the gas pump before long. I mean, this happened a couple of years ago, maybe longer. But you go to these various gas stations and, there wasn't any. Now I could always snake around to wend my way through the various neighborhoods and come up with a little local gas station. I didn't have any trouble finding gasoline. The vast majority of people that I saw pulling into those big, Chevron stations, big Shell stations, stuff like that. Yep. They just drove right back on out, because there wasn't any gas. Their little red tags were on all the pump handles. So, I mean, what are we preparing for? I mean, it's not possible to prepare for everything. So what are the basics other than, I'm thinking that the key to surviving the next one is going to be invisibility and mobility. That aside, if you can't be mobile and if you can't be altogether invisible because, well, you screwed up, you can't leave, just like they locked down Dallas in about 10 minutes. They do this 27K marathon once a year. And for the duration of that marathon, you're not going anywhere. You can't even get to a highway. I mean, unless you really are creative in your routing. So what do we prepare for in the short term while we pay attention to see what's liable to get worse and cause another problem that we have to come up with an answer to?
You start with community. To survive a disaster, you got to have community. Now, if you think about it, one form of execution, for example, in Native American tribes, you just shun the person. You put them out of the tribe. Now, these people knew how to find roots and herbs and make tools and do this and that, but it was a death sentence to get ostracized from a community. When we had our small towns that come up, you had blacksmiths, this and that. The only thing that I've studied in history that we can really look at that's more modern day, you look at Bosnia and the Serbian War and all that. You had city got surrounded by ethnic cleansing, armies fighting, civilians caught in the middle of it, no power, and the neighborhoods banded together. And I started looking at how did they survive and whatnot. And you only survived by having your neighbors pull together. And these days, times, nobody even knows your neighbor half the time. You take time to find out who's living next to you, whether or not y'all going to help each other in a disaster. And then you do your basics of your prepping. I mean, like I said, water is the big thing. That's the great equalizer. As soon as that water tap's shut off, sewer shuts down, what you going to do? The only thing that they know is they're going to head for the nearest river or whatever. And then you're going to have everybody of all different classifications of life trying to get by and then be that desperate. That's what you want to avoid. You want to stay in, not be mobile, stay in. And then after the great die-off, then you can go out there and be mobile and pick up whatever else they had left, or just know basics like, you got 20 extra gallons of water in your tank. If you know how to undo the screw at the bottom of the thing, you get the neighbors that didn't know that left their house to go get some water. Take time to learn who your neighbor is, say hello, have some interest, and eventually try to direct the conversation to, it flooded the other day, and I was thinking about you over here, and I don't have enough food. Do you have enough food? You can find out what's in their house a little bit too, right? Are they going to knock on your door? Get you some beans and rice, and all right, if somebody knocks, give it to them. That way you don't worry about them as bad, but make them work for it. Say, look, I need help putting in a garden or doing this or that. I'll help you, you help me. It's not free.
Gotcha.
That's join your army, You're going to help us defend this end of the block or something. These crazy people over here. Everybody knows who's crazy on the block usually, because you got to look out for when the poo really does hit the fan.
And when we go to ronfoster.webs.com, what do we get? Can we get your books from there?
You get the majority of my books up there. No, the best thing to do is just Ron Foster, Amazon Central. That's my central page, and it's got all my books on there. I don't take care of my little web page that much, that I have over there. It's more of a way for my fans to communicate with me on the bottom of the page and have access to me. I talk to anybody. I'm on Facebook. I'm Solar Prepper over on Twitter. Got 36,000 followers. If you want to ask me a question, talk to me. I'm easy accessible. I talk to a lot of people, develop a lot of good friends over the years.
Okay, and you're a member of postapoc.net. I'm taking a look at that as we speak.
Yeah, it's a bunch of apocalyptic authors. I'm a member of what they call the Written Apocalypse on Facebook, which start out with the chosen 13 of our top authors. Now we just let everybody in. It's I got my books on the audio. I'm out there, and like I said, I'm easy accessible. Somebody just wants to know something or get an opinion, I'll talk to you. I don't sit up in my ivory tower like a lot of the authors do, or get out there and preach basic survival. That drives me crazy a little bit. Y'all got to keep that in mind. I've been doing this so long that basic questions that you can find elsewhere I don't like too much, but unique ones like we were talking about the ice machine, or I think I play a game with people. We're on 85 uses for a poncho now.
Wow. 85 uses for a poncho. Well, let's hear some of them.
Too. Well, you can collect water with it. You put it up and you run it into a bucket, make it funnel shaped. So we get bigger surface area to get more water if it rained, if you were trying to save rain. I know down here in the South, we got red bugs and all kind of critters that you don't want to lay in. If you're walking down the road, you put that down, you lay on top of it. Worst thing in the world would be if the solar storm hit and your car goes down, you're walking along, you get rained on. You got shelter. I can catch fish with it. I can, like I said, we sit there and we play the game, go back and forth on different things. One thing, for example, I tell people, a city is a desert when the water shuts off, and you got to know how to go down that road. I did that in Prepper's Road March. You know, it's like clear plastic flags that, sit in every office building,
Sure.
The garbage can. You stick that thing over a bush or whatever, you got a tree transpiration still. The sun heats up the leaves, the moisture comes out of the leaves, it collects in the bottom of the bag, you got water. That's, you can find those bags, you got the knowledge, like I said, prepare to lose everything but your mind. You didn't have to buy a water filter, you couldn't find water to begin with. Or if you live on the coast, learn how to desalinate it with a couple salad bowls on the beach and some saran wrap. I do basic stuff that you can carry around your head. It weighs nothing. Nobody can steal it from you. And you feel more confident and you got a better chance of surviving.
What's the old fart survival guide? I kind of like that one,
Oh yeah. You like my gypsy on the cover?
No, you bet.
Yeah, he looked like he knew a thing or two. That's basically everything that I know how to go about doing things with less energy and working smarter. Uh, I tell people, for example, I give them a short, brief scenario or an excerpt from a book that, you got all this money invested in the bug out bag, you got all this equipment, but you're not working as smart as me. For example, I'm walking along with the staff. I don't have to hunt me a fishing pole. I got that. If wild dogs come after me, I know what to do. I stay in the woods. I use BB guns instead of, 50 cows, I teach you a realistic way to survive. I tell you how to heat your house, with a couple of garbage bags, stuff that people don't think of. And the majority of what I want you to remember is stuff that doesn't cost any money, just to have the knowledge. And if you have that knowledge, you can survive anything.
Well, I suspect that one of the biggest problems is going to be, don't let people know that you're there, that you have anything that they may need. I don't really want to be out there rocking with the marauders, and the outlaws.
No.
I'd rather, get away from it. Don't engage it, but that's not always possible if you get stuck in it. But I mean, is that the thing?
Yeah, well, it's like like smell of food goes a long distance. You got to think about that. But you can go get a cheap, what they call a transient burner. It's a brass burner turned into alcohol stove, and burns 90% isopropyl alcohol. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff I get out of paint stores, et cetera, that's flammable. You can cook inside, boil your water, do what you want, and you're not out there. And it doesn't take a lot of money to prep, and that's what the problem with a lot of people is. They spend so much money on junk that they don't need, or they don't think things through. And I try to keep them away from that instead of buying, 5,000 rounds of ammo to defend that one can of wheat they have left from the neighbor. They better think of how many neighbors are going to take to plant that wheat, and how we're going to get by with this.
Yeah, that's, I can't imagine what that would be like. I guess, given all the variables that you're liable to encounter, if a situation like that descends upon you and you're in it, I got a feeling you're going to have to kind of play it by ear. There's nothing really said about it.
You want time on your side and away from everybody. You want to be away from everybody. I mean, Ellie, you got fools that were distributing food, in a war zone, whatnot, charge a position like Somalia. They're the worst ones. Like you got rice and they're going to try to charge, and even if you're shooting them, they're still going to try to do it. That's stupidity on their part. You wait till they get thinned out. They get thinned out quick. Like I said, that water gets them. As soon as they can't get water, or they don't know to boil water, they get waterborne diseases, etc. You're going to have a big die-off, and things are going to get easier, and the people that actually know, care, do will be there, and then they take care of the rogue elements. We reorganize society like we always have and put the rule of law back in it.
I got another one off the menu. What's to be done about this unchecked illegal immigration? These people they're not going to assimilate. They're going to form their own little groups, just like they always do, and that's going to be that. And they'll get real defensive about this. And they will. So, I mean, some of these people, desperate people do desperate things. Poor folks got poor ways. So, I mean, if they get hungry, they don't have it and you have it, they'll take it. And I'm just wondering, we got a lot of snowflakes in this country. I don't think they're going to make it. I really don't. In a serious situation, they won't. They're not going to make it. It's going to be.
They ain't even been a real fight in their life.
Exactly.
Let alone, our ghetto folk look at them or something, we got to get back to basics. And things cycle. Like I said, we had a lot of the preppers nowadays that I know, instead of prepping this, it's very hard to differentiate a prepper and a homesteader. But remember, our grandparents, they always had a pantry. They put up food. They did all this and that. They knew how to do that. They didn't go buy some cans of stuff, expensive crap, They knew how to get by. So prepping shouldn't be bad on that, or the survivalist mentality where you need the biggest gun. Are you preparing for war, or are you preparing to survive, is what I'm trying to teach people. You don't need all the ammo and whatnot for the zombie apocalypse. You need more food. You need to stay in. You need to build your community, because if you're only preparing to go to war, that's what's going to happen. You got a bunch of trigger happy idiots out there that see here in Alabama. I go hunting. If I get on another farmer's thing, he's out there with the gun. I know how to greet him. I know how to talk to him. I know how to get off his land and get out of it. Now you get a bunch of people that are not used to being around people with guns or walk in like Dodge City, that everybody's got a pistol on, and know how to act and not get shot. So that's going to be the biggie right there. Everybody's going to be brandishing weapons, but not knowing how to get along with others brandishing weapons. I mean, like we're in the military. We all carry a gun. Everybody's got a gun. We all know the other person got a gun. Act appropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking that if people will avail themselves of your books, it'll go a long way to adjusting their mindset as well as the actual practical things they need to do to sit through anything. It's impossible to predict. But what you think in a year, you may have to, if something serious were to occur, you need to be able to handle it for a year, 6 months, 3 months, or, based on your association with DHS and so forth, it means somebody must have calculated, well, the average length of a crisis is 90 days or 6 months or whatever, unless you got a force like the United States bombing you day and night and stuff like that, like in the Middle East. But
they started with 72 hours and they said 4 weeks. Now they said you can pick it up here and there. They're saying 6 months because they're talking about to replace the transformers, etc. I've seen a lot of traffic on the highways with transformers going on these days. I find quite interesting. I've never seen that before because I always notice that kind of stuff. Like whole truckloads of them going here, there, and yon, and it wasn't right after a disaster. So they're prepping for something. I don't know where they're going. But know what's in your backyard. Know that you can eat dandelions. When we growing up, they make you dig them to death, and people spend all this money eradicating. That's one of the best foods you can have. You can make wine out of it. You can make coffee out of it. You can do whatever. Just know what's available in your neighborhood that you can eat if you have to. That takes you a long way, and then know that don't eat grass. We're not a cow. We don't have that double stomach to be able to get anything nutrition out of it. If they just take an interest in nature, that's what's interesting when we did I call it the Come As You Are Apocalypse. That's the theme of a lot of books. It's whatever you got on you, and I had everybody come down there. And I'll tell you, these preppers, they don't even know how to start a fire sometimes. They get one of them flint and steel over here, and it's like, oh, they didn't take the paint off. This thing don't work. I said, man, get the paint off it first. It works. And it's fun watching them make fire and whatnot, but they actually get out there and demonstrate their skills. Just having stuff don't mean nothing. You got to have skills, and you got to have a little bit of knowledge. And just, go fishing with the kids. Don't say, oh, I'm going fishing. If you haven't been fishing before, it's a new experience. Hunting and all that. If you haven't done it, you're not going to learn it that quick. It takes years, and just being out in nature. Get away, put the phone down. Be used to being without it, not going off all the time. I think that's going to be a main thing with the millennials. They're going crazy, I'm not connected,
Right. All right. Well, look, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for the time. And we're going to get into this, and we'll reach out to you and see how we might be able to, spread the awareness of your books and the availability of them around a little heavier, because it sounds to me like you know what you're talking about, And we're always,
thank you, sir.
Yeah, we like talking to people who know what they're talking about. That way I can let them do the talking. I don't have to do so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
So we all glean stuff off each other.
That's it. Stay safe out there. We'll be in touch.
All the best. Thank you, sir.
Same to you. Bye-bye for now. I'm keen on getting a copy of this, Old Farts, a survival guide, just in the event that I become an old fart one day. More to come.